Take a slow breath before we begin. This isn't an easy lesson, but it might be one of the most necessary ones you'll ever face. Emotional detachment doesn't always arrive with the goodbye. Sometimes you're still there, sitting beside someone, sharing the same space, yet already gone inside. You keep waiting for a glance, a word, a trace of care that never comes. And still, you stay, not out of weakness, but because you loved, you believed, you gave from the depths of your heart. But there comes a point when holding on starts to suffocate you more than it sustains you. That's when the real struggle begins, not with them, but with yourself. Stoic wisdom doesn't tell you to shut down your feelings. It asks you to see them clearly, to separate what belongs to you from what doesn't, to know the difference between what you can nurture and what you must release, and above all, to understand that attachment is not the same as love, and love should never come at the cost of yourself. In this episode, I won't ask you to erase the memory of someone you once loved. Love deserves to be honored, even when it changes form. What I will invite you to do is free yourself from the weight that love left behind, the pain that still ties you to them. We'll explore 10 Stoic principles drawn from the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius to help you reclaim your heart, your mind, and your life. The goal isn't to harden or to grow distant. It's to return to yourself, to quiet that lingering voice that keeps whispering, maybe they'll come back, maybe this time they'll change. Because today, it isn't them who changes, it's you. Are you ready to begin? 1. Accept what is beyond your hands. Have you ever found yourself replaying the same moments over and over, wondering what you could have said, done, or held on to so they wouldn't leave? It's as if your mind becomes a theater of regrets, looping the same scene endlessly. But the first step to emotional freedom isn't in rewriting the past. It's in fully accepting the present. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That one truth changes the way we see heartbreak. Because you cannot control another person's heart. You cannot force them to stay. You cannot rewrite the choices they've already made. When that truth sinks in, not just in your thoughts, but in your bones, you begin to release the weight you've been dragging for far too long. We often confuse letting go with giving up, but they are not the same. Giving up is losing faith in life. Letting go is choosing to stop fighting battles you were never meant to win. Clinging to someone who has already stepped away is like holding onto a rope as it burns your hands. The tighter you grip, the deeper the wound. So pause and ask yourself gently, why am I still trying to control what isn't mine to hold? Is it fear of being alone? Or the belief that I am not enough without them? Is it the hope that closure will finally give you peace? Or the belief that holding on just a little longer will somehow undo the loss? Whatever the reason, the cost is always the same, because the more you try to hold on to them, the more of yourself you let slip away. Detachment begins with a quiet shift in responsibility. It's the moment you say to yourself, I am responsible for how I love, not for how my love is received. I am responsible for how I show up, not for whether they see my worth. I am responsible for how I heal, not for whether they return. That shift is where strength lives. That shift is where peace begins. Think of a tree in autumn. It doesn't panic when its leaves begin to fall. It doesn't cling to what's leaving. It lets go, not because it failed, but because letting go is part of its nature. The same is true for us. People come and go. Feelings change. What was once steady becomes uncertain. And yes, it hurts. But resisting this truth doesn't bring comfort. It only deepens the wound. So instead of asking, why did they stop caring? Ask, what part of me is still trying to rewrite what's already been written? instead of hoping they'll wake up and realize what they lost. Wake yourself up and see what you've been losing while waiting. Your time, your energy, your clarity, your self-respect. Here is the hard truth. Healing doesn't begin when they come back. It begins the moment you stop needing them to. Sit with that. Accept it. Not because it feels easy, but because it's what sets you free. 2. Stop romanticizing what hurt you. When someone leaves, why is it that our memory becomes selective? We replay the laughter, the connection, the promises. We create a highlight reel, as if the good moments alone define the whole story. But pain has a way of polishing the past, sanding down the rough edges, editing out the silence, the distance, the moments that made you feel unseen. That is one of the greatest emotional traps, not the person themselves, but the idea of who we believed they were. And that idea was often what we're really holding on to. That's what keeps us tethered, not to them, but to a memory shaped by longing. You're not in love with who they are now. You're holding on to a version of them that exists only in your mind, carefully preserved by a heart afraid to release what once felt safe. But Stoicism calls us to see life as it is, not as we wish it to be. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And when we romanticize someone who hurt us, we're reacting from emotion, not clarity. We're choosing the comfort of illusion over the weight of truth. Every time we return to that illusion, we're pouring energy into a ghost that cannot hold you, cannot show up for you, cannot heal you. It's time to take the pedestal down, to stop idealizing someone who could not give you what you needed. Maybe they weren't cruel. Maybe they were simply unready, unavailable, or unaware of the depth you carried. But the scar they left is real. Pretending otherwise isn't strength, it's denial. Ask yourself honestly, if someone repeatedly left you feeling anxious, unseen, or not enough, is it truly love you're longing for? Or is it the familiarity, the comfort of what once was, or the version of yourself you hoped to preserve when you were with them? You owe yourself the truth. Clarity isn't harsh. It's a form of compassion. It protects what remains of you. When you stop romanticizing the past, you stop inviting it back into your heart. You begin to see the whole picture, the joy and the pain side by side. And only when you see both can you truly release it. So the next time your thoughts drift to those moments, pause and ask gently, am I remembering reality? Or am I clinging to a fantasy that keeps me from moving forward? Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means facing the past with open eyes and choosing yourself anyway. Let go of the story. Let go of the fantasy. And in that open space, begin writing something new, something real, where you are no longer a second choice in your own life. 3. Create distance to regain clarity. When emotions are raw, closeness can become poison. Staying near to someone you're trying to release, physically, digitally, or even in thought, keeps the wound open. It's like trying to dry your clothes while standing in the rain. You hope for healing, but you remain in the storm that soaked you. The Stoics understood this well. They spoke not only of stepping back from people, but from the impulses and illusions that cloud our judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible. But you cannot rebuild if your mind is still orbiting around someone else's gravity." Emotional detachment doesn't begin with coldness. It begins with distance. Distance clears the fog. It lets you see what was real, what was projection, and what was never truly aligned to begin with. Sometimes that distance does mean stepping away completely. Other times it's quieter, drawing firm boundaries, stopping the small habits that keep you tied. Don't check their social media. Don't read old messages like they hold answers. Don't feed the echo of wondering where they are or if they still think of you. Every time you do, you hand over a piece of your attention, not to them, but to the version of them that lives rent-free in your mind. There's a power that only returns when you reclaim your focus. Clarity is born in that space. Step back, and you'll start to see the dynamics clearly. The things you tolerated, the parts of yourself you silenced, the way you settled just to feel wanted. You begin to remember who you were before the confusion. And more importantly, you start to see who you can become after it. Think of your mind as a room. As long as they sit in the center of it, there's no space for you to breathe. But when you open the windows, when you let the air of detachment in, the noise quiets, the temperature cools, and for the first time, you hear yourself again. So ask yourself, what am I still holding on to that keeps me close to them? What would happen if I gave myself a day, a week, or a month without their shadow over me? The answers might feel uncomfortable at first, but they will also set you free. Detach, not because you no longer care, but because you care enough about yourself to create space for peace. Detach so you can return to yourself, not the version they liked, not the version they broke, but the version you were always meant to be. 4. Master your reactions, not their behavior. We spend so much energy decoding the actions of others. Why did they change? Why did they pull away? Why are they cold now when they were once so warm? It becomes a full-time job trying to predict and analyze someone else's emotional weather. But here's the truth. The more you focus on them, the less you come to know yourself. And that's the quiet trap of attachment. It feeds itself through your focus on what you cannot control. The Stoics taught a truth both radical and freeing. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them. You don't suffer because they moved on. You suffer because of the story you tell yourself about their silence. You don't ache because they changed. You ache because you expected them not to. It isn't their behavior that cuts the deepest. It's your interpretation of it. This is where your power returns, in mastering your reactions. When they ignore you, you don't chase. When they post something that feels like a dagger, you don't spiral. When their presence fades, you don't let it define your worth. Because their choices speak of who they are, not of who you are. Your freedom lives in the space between their action and your response. And the moment you choose that response consciously, you step outside their control. This isn't about numbing yourself, it's about seeing clearly. It's giving yourself the pause between stimulus and reaction, breathing through the trigger instead of becoming it. It isn't easy, especially when love still lingers. But it's essential, because every desperate message, every emotional spiral, every overanalysis only fuels the fire you're trying to put out. You don't have to change how they act. You only have to change what you make it mean. There is a rare strength in being treated with indifference and still choosing dignity, in being pulled away from and still choosing self-respect. That is the Stoic response. That is the beginning of emotional maturity. And it's not just about them. This is training for life itself. People will always shift, withdraw, disappoint, surprise. If your peace depends on their behavior, it will always be fragile. But if your peace is built on your clarity, your principles, your ability to choose your response, nothing outside of you can take it away. So next time you feel the pull to react, pause. Ask yourself, does this reaction honor the person I am becoming? Or is it just reaching for the attention of someone who has already left? The answer may sting, but it will also free you. Let the world be what it is. Let people be who they are. But master yourself, and you'll never again be a prisoner to their chaos. 5. Redefine love as something you give, not something you chase. Most of us were taught to see love as something we receive, something handed to us from the outside, confirmed by another person's attention, affection, or presence. So when that love is withdrawn, it feels as if something vital has been taken away, as if part of who we are has been erased. But that belief, though common, is the very reason heartbreak feels like destruction. The truth is, love was never something you had to chase. It was something you carried all along. The Stoics didn't speak of romantic love in the way we think of it today, but their philosophy points to something deeper. They taught that virtue, living with integrity, reason, and alignment, is the highest good. And love, in its truest form, is virtuous. It doesn't demand, manipulate, or fracture you to feel whole. It is something you live through your values, not something you beg for through someone else's approval. So what happens when you love someone who doesn't love you back? That is where your definition of love is revealed. If love to you is a transaction, if it only exists when it's returned, then their absence will always feel like loss. But if love is something you give to remain true to your heart, not to be repaid, not to be possessed, then even when it isn't returned, it doesn't break you. Because you haven't lost anything. You simply offered something genuine, and they weren't able to hold it. Redefining love doesn't make you cold or detached. It allows you to love without losing yourself. It's what lets you say, I cared deeply, I showed up fully, I gave what I had to give. And now I walk away with my dignity intact. Think of it this way. If your worth depends on being chosen by someone else, then your worth will always be at risk. But if your worth is defined by how you choose to love, with honesty, with courage, with depth, then it remains untouchable, even in rejection. So many people stay bound to the past, not because they are still in love, but because they never felt seen. They long for that person to return, not for love itself, but for the validation that their love mattered. But what if it already mattered? What if the fact that you loved with your whole heart was enough in itself? What if the closure you've been waiting for isn't a conversation with them, but a quiet shift inside you, a deeper understanding of what love truly is? Ask yourself gently, am I loving because I want to offer something real, or because I am trying to fill a space I believe only they can reach? That question may sting, but it holds the key, because the love you gave was never wasted. It was living proof that your heart is capable of depth, of devotion, of something rare. That love expanded you, it shaped you, and now it's time to give that same love to the one person who needs it most, yourself. 6. Don't confuse pain with connection. This is one of the most subtle illusions after loss. The belief that if it still hurts, it must still mean something, that the ache in your chest is proof of a bond too deep to break. That pain itself is evidence the story isn't finished. But what if pain isn't a sign of connection at all? What if it's a sign of resistance? What if the ache is no longer about them, but about your own reluctance to release the story you've been telling yourself? The mind craves meaning. When someone we care about leaves, the silence feels unbearable. So the brain reaches for the pain and tries to make it sacred. We tell ourselves, I still feel this way because what we had was real. But sometimes pain lingers not because of love, but because of the space we refuse to open within ourselves to let that love move on. Real love doesn't chain you to suffering. True connection doesn't survive on misery. If the only thing keeping them alive in your heart is your sadness, that isn't love. That's a wound asking to be healed. The Stoics taught us to look beyond the surface of our emotions and see their deeper mechanics. As Epictetus said, when something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it. You can either accept it or resent it. Pain is inevitable, but what we build around that pain, the story we tell, the meaning we assign, that's where our freedom is either found or lost. There are people who stay emotionally bound for years, not because the love is still alive, but because the pain has become familiar. They've wrapped their identity around heartbreak until it feels safer to hold on to the wound than to heal it. That isn't connection. That's captivity, emotional inertia, forgetting that you are allowed to feel deeply and still let go. So ask yourself the hard question: am I still in love, or am I just attached to the feeling of missing them? Because longing can become a habit. If you're not careful, sadness begins to feel like significance. You start believing that moving on would dishonor what you felt. But the truth is the opposite. Letting go isn't betrayal. It's respect. Respect for yourself, for what was, and for what deserves to come next. If the pain is still sharp, let it be. That only means you are human. But don't worship it. Don't feed it until it becomes your home. You can honor your feelings without letting them define your future. So the next time your chest tightens and your mind drifts back, pause and ask, is this real love, or just the echo of something I haven't released yet? The answer may not come quickly, but even asking moves you closer to peace. And that peace isn't the end of the connection. It's the beginning of a new one between you and your freedom. 7. Focus on who you are becoming, not who you lost. When someone leaves, it can feel as though the chapter closed not only on the relationship, but on you, your joy, your direction, even your sense of self. You don't just grieve them, you grieve the version of yourself that existed when they were beside you. And in that fog, we make a quiet mistake. We start living in reverse, looking back, replaying, comparing. But healing doesn't happen backwards. It begins the moment you shift your gaze from who left to who you are becoming now. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about directing it. And that direction should always lead you back to your values, your clarity, your growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The same truth applies here. Don't spend your life wondering what the relationship could have been. Spend it becoming the person who no longer needs it to feel whole. Pain has a way of stripping us bare, revealing what truly matters. Maybe you abandoned your passions to keep them comfortable. Maybe you made yourself small to make room for them. Maybe you gave until you forgot what it felt like to receive. That isn't failure, that's awakening. Because here's the quiet truth. They may have left your life, but the lesson didn't. And that lesson is sacred. Within every ending lies a blueprint for the next version of you, wiser, stronger, more aware. But you cannot meet that version while you're still chasing ghosts. So the question shifts. What will you build now that they are gone? Not out of revenge, not to prove anything, but because the time and energy you once poured into them now belongs to you. Start small, reconnect with your habits, return to the goals you set aside while waiting for their attention. Read something that stretches your mind. Move your body. Speak to yourself with the same kindness you kept giving away. Day by day, these aren't just actions. They are quiet declarations. I am not stuck in the past. I am not defined by what I've lost. I am building something new, from the inside out. It's okay to look back. It's okay to miss them. But don't live there. Your future does not wait behind you. And the person you are becoming, the one who chose clarity over confusion, self-worth over chasing, that person deserves your full attention. Let their absence be the space where your growth begins. Let the silence become your canvas. And let your life speak, not in whispers of what was lost, but in the steady, clear actions of who you are now becoming. 8. Protect your peace as if it is your most valuable possession. When someone leaves your life, especially someone who once meant everything, it's tempting to keep the door cracked open, to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'll walk back in. So you stay emotionally available. You check on them. You leave a small part of yourself waiting just in case. But every time you leave that door unlocked, you invite chaos into the one space that should be sacred, your inner peace. The Stoics understood this. They believed peace isn't something found outside of us, but something built, choice by choice, boundary by boundary. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." True peace isn't passive. It is forged in the fire of what we allow, what we tolerate, and what we walk away from. So ask yourself, what am I still allowing that disturbs my peace? Maybe it's replaying old conversations until they echo. Maybe it's hoping for a message that never comes. Maybe it's watching their life through updates and stories, as if seeing them live will somehow help you feel alive again. But you know it doesn't. It only deepens the wound. Protecting your peace means closing the emotional tabs they still occupy. It means resisting the urge to prove your worth or remind them of what they lost. Not out of bitterness, but out of healing. Because every time you leave your peace in their hands, you hand over the remote control to your own mind. And you deserve to be the one who decides the volume of your thoughts. Imagine your peace as a fire you're tending. Every thought, every choice, every boundary you set adds warmth and strength. But each time you let them back in without purpose or clarity, it's like pouring cold water over the flames. And then you wonder why steady calm feels so distant. Here's the truth. Your peace is yours to protect. No one else will guard it for you. That may mean choosing silence. It may mean blocking. It may mean embracing solitude instead of chaos. And yes, at first, it might feel like loss. But over time, you'll see it for what it really is, self-respect. Peace isn't loud or dramatic, but it is powerful. It lets you breathe freely without waiting on anyone else. It gives back your mornings, your rest, your joy. It shows you that life can feel calm, even when others have left. Protect it fiercely. Because in a world full of noise, in a mind crowded with distractions, your peace is the one thing no one can buy, borrow, or replace. 9. Don't seek closure from someone who couldn't give you clarity. We all long for that final conversation, that moment when everything makes sense, when they explain why they changed, why they left, why they let go of what you still held. It's natural to believe that understanding will dissolve the pain. But here's the Stoic truth. Closure is rarely something we receive. It's something we create within ourselves. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or trouble your soul. And that includes getting worked up over explanations that may never come." Some people left not because you weren't enough, but because they couldn't face their own inner chaos. Some changed without warning because they were never honest with themselves. And some simply faded, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Waiting for closure from those who lack emotional depth is like waiting for stillness in the middle of a storm. If they couldn't offer honesty when they were close, why expect clarity now that they're gone? You don't need their words to move forward. What you need is a decision. A decision to stop waiting for permission to heal. To stop hoping they'll tie up the loose ends they left behind. Because even if that final conversation came, would it truly change the silence, the unanswered messages, the moments you begged for presence and only received distance? More often than not, closure isn't about finding answers. It's about acceptance. It's about seeing clearly that what they did or didn't do is a reflection of who they are, not a measure of your worth. It's about stepping back far enough to understand that love shouldn't be confusing or manipulative, nor so fragile that it shatters without a word. Closure is about reclaiming your story, not as someone who was abandoned, but as someone who chose to rise when no one came to lift them. You may never know why they pulled away. You may never fully distinguish what was real from what was performance. But you do know how it felt. You know how your body tensed when they were near. You remember waiting, wondering, trying harder while they gave less. That knowing is enough. It's not poetic. It's not wrapped in tidy endings. But it's true. And truth, however simple, is all you need to begin again. So let go of the script. Let go of the perfect ending. You don't need their apology to forgive. You don't need their confession to release. You don't even need their memory to move forward. What you need is to tell yourself, I didn't get closure, but I gained wisdom. I gained strength. I found myself again. 10. Choose freedom over fantasy. There comes a moment when you have to ask yourself a difficult question. Am I holding on to this person or to the story I created about them? Often, we stay attached not because the relationship was what we hoped, but because the fantasy felt easier to bear than the truth. We cling not to who they are, but to who we wished they'd become, the version we needed them to be. But hope without reality becomes a prison. And if you're not careful, you'll spend years trying to relive something that never truly existed. The Stoics remind us, reality is your ally. Illusion is your enemy. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to live in harmony with nature, with things as they are, not as he wished them to be. That's what emotional detachment requires. The courage to face your fantasy, look it squarely in the eye, and let it go. To accept that they weren't ready, that they didn't show up, that their silence said more than any apology ever could. Freedom is not found in waiting. It's found in release. When you live in fantasy, you put your life on pause. You wait for texts that won't come. You replay conversations that never happened. You dream of a version of them that exists only in your mind. But real life is happening without you. While you remain frozen in longing, your future is knocking, and you can't hear it over the noise of your own illusions. Choosing freedom doesn't mean the pain vanishes overnight. It means you decide that your reality, with all its sadness, all its healing, all its truth, is better than a perfect lie. It means you accept the ending, even without the fairy tale. It means you choose presence over possibility. So ask yourself, what has this fantasy cost me? How many nights of peace? How many mornings of clarity? How much confidence have I lost chasing someone who wasn't even looking back? And more importantly, what might I create, become, build if I finally let go? You are not here to live in what if. You're here to live in what is and to build something meaningful from it. That journey begins the moment you stop asking whether they'll come back and start asking what your life looks like when you no longer need them to. Because real love, the kind that is aligned, reciprocal, and empowering, never needs to be chased. And the longer you hold space for someone who's already gone, the more you delay the arrival of the person, the peace, and the power meant for you. So choose freedom, choose clarity, choose yourself. Walk forward, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with quiet strength. You let go. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally remembered what you deserve. Letting go doesn't erase the past. It doesn't mean pretending you were never hurt or acting like you never loved. It means choosing peace over chaos. It means standing in the middle of your pain and still deciding, I deserve better than this confusion. It means honoring what was and releasing what no longer serves who you are becoming. The wisdom of the Stoics was never about suppressing emotion. It was about directing it, channeling it into something greater, into growth, into strength, into stillness, and above all, into freedom. Because in the end, the real test isn't whether someone loved you back. The real test is whether you can still love yourself after they didn't. So if you're listening today, still hurting, still wondering, still quietly hoping for a message or a miracle, I want you to remember this. You are not broken. You are becoming. Every time you choose clarity over illusion, presence over longing, truth over fantasy, you're not just moving on. You're rising. This is your turning point, not when they come back, but when you do. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who might need it too. And remember to subscribe to Stoic Mindset Mastery. Together, we're building a space for reflection, healing, and strength.